What is up, guys? And oh god, let's bring this closer. And let's turn on the track. It's been a while. I'm treating myself. Oh yeah! How's that? Probably no difference. Anyway, what is up, guys? And welcome back to a brand new video. Today, we're talking about F1 2021. The game hasn't come out yet. Won't come out for a good few months yet. I was meant to make this video back in, I think, August of this year. Recorded the video, sent it off to my editor, nothing really happened, and then the video got a bit outdated because Arab started making his improvement videos for 2021, and I'm like, oh, throw it in the bin. So, I should have just released the video anyway. So what I'm doing is I'm re-recording that video and also adding in more ideas that I've had come to me over the last few months. So that is what we're doing. I'm also going to do a video related to multiplayer that should be quite juicy. So if you have any suggestions for multiplayer, or if there's any things I've said in this video that, you know, well, things that I haven't said that you guys are thinking of that improve the games, feel free to chuck them in the comments and I'll maybe include them in a future video. I definitely will do a multiplayer video, but anyway, I'm waffling. Let's get into my team improvements. This is all single player stuff. So, yeah, get ready, because I have a lot of suggestions which will make the games a lot better. So, the first thing is, controversially, pay drivers. Having a pay driver mechanic where this is more relevant to when you're first starting out, when funds are a little bit hard to come by, your team reputation isn't great. You bring in a pay driver, they bring in money to help you invest in the facilities and progress your team that much further. I think that's a mechanic that's kind of missing in this year's game, and one that could be quite good, especially once we implement a few other features which make earning money a little bit harder to come by, because I feel like in F1 2020 it was way too easy to earn money, and it almost felt like a free money generator in that game. I made a video, or in fact I didn't make a video. I attempted to make a video where I tried to go bankrupt in F1 2020, and it's impossible. It's physically impossible. F1 is a money pit as it is, and to not be able to go bankrupt is just appalling. The system is way too easy and it needs to be overhauled. So yeah, for that reason, there needs to be like way harder punishments for crashing out in a race or failing objectives or whatever it might be. Reliability failures, it needs to be so much more costly. There needs to be a genuine risk that you could go under financial wise. Otherwise, it just seems a bit too easy and people get bored because it's not a challenge in a way. So that's something that I think would really add to the game. Anyway, I got off on a tangent a bit there, but I was on the subject of drivers. I said pay drivers. I want more free agents. So people who are maybe distanced from the sport, who don't have a drive. I think initially straight away of Alonso. And I said Alonso before he was signed to Renault. He's now signed to Renault. He's coming back to F1. But Hulkenberg as well. Alexander Albon will be a relevant one, as he's going to DTM. So he's technically a free agent, and he's not signed to an F1 team. And I'm sure he could come back into any F1 at any time that he likes. So yeah, I think there needs to be more of those F1 rejects floating around in the driver transfer market to sign without having to pay an upfront fee. You just have to pay for their wage, essentially. So that would be really, really cool. More drivers, more reserve drivers for other teams, like, well, Albon's a reserve driver. I was going to stop mentioning Albon. But like Esteban Gutierrez, you know, every team has a reserve driver. So being able to serve those reserve drivers would be really cool, but you'd have to pay a fee for those guys because they're signed to a different team. Formula E drivers, there's lots of people in there, like John-Eric Verne, Stoffel Van Dorn. I don't know if Felipe Massa is still racing in there, but you know, there's a lot. Pascal Wehrlein, etc. We could bring back a lot of legendary or, well, familiar names back to the sport by just having those extra people. But I recognize that requires extra licensing because they're signed to, you know, a Formula E team. Whatever, but I think just in general, we need way more drivers to choose from in the driver transfer market. Moving on, Young Driver Academy. So I think it would be really cool to have that kind of elements, depth of feature added to the game to sign someone under the age of 21, 22, definitely under, well, yeah, under 20, but definitely under like 22 or something. So sign someone who maybe even isn't a real driver, is a regen driver or something, or an F2 driver, an F3 driver. Someone who I really want to sign is Oscar Piastri, who was in F3 last year. I would straight away have him as my academy driver, and then I'd bring him up. Once he's developed his stats a little bit more, he can make use of my simulator and gym and stuff, and then he can be a better driver, and I can promote him. I can be rewarded for training him for over a long period of time. He might even be a better option than, say, someone else who's currently established in F1 because I've trained him up. I think that would be really sick. So it gives a long-term goal, extra longevity of if you're really wanting to sign someone who's in the junior ranks, because I know a lot of people do watch F2 and F3 quite religiously and have favorite drivers even in that series. So to bring them up would be really, really cool for those people. So yeah, that Young Driver Academy would be sick. And then as an extra feature, nominate your academy driver to race, well, not race, but to take part in an FP1 session, and they could earn maybe more resource points than what you would by taking part, because you have to sacrifice your seat time to let them in. So I think the benefit for giving up your seat time should be extra resource points, or, you know, testing things. I think that'd be really sick. So yeah, let me know what you think about that one. We now move on to a different category, and this is damage. This is a bit more generic. I think everyone would agree with this. Having more realistic damage would be sick. Things like floor damage, suspension damage, running over curbs too often, more failures, so random generated failures for the player, which don't happen really. You have to get to like 99 or 100% wear on a part for it to fail. I just think that's a bit stupid. If the AI cars can retire randomly at any moment, then we should be able to as well. I think the game needs to be a lot more unforgiving, a lot more brutal, and I think people would enjoy it actually a whole lot more. There's one game that I think of straight away is F1 2006. It's a game that's so brutal. There's actually no flashbacks, there's no restarts, and can things fail? No, I'm not sure, but the game is really unforgiving, and I really appreciate it for that feature. It gives it a whole lot more character, and when you do have a weekend that goes well, it feels euphoric. It feels so much more satisfying than winning a race on F1 2020, for example. I just can't... It has to be down to the fact that it's so much more brutal, and when you do succeed, it means so much more. So I think making things a whole lot more difficult would be the way to go, because I think literally we get handed things on a plate. We get spoon-fed our championships sometimes with too many AIs getting grid penalties or failures or whatever it might be. It's just a bit silly. Anyway, I probably should have included this in the first segment, but I would love to see a feature where we could create another team in my team. So like a junior team, essentially, but to make people play a little bit deeper into the career mode. Maybe they have to do it after 4 seasons or 5 seasons, or just make it so impossibly hard to do that you need to save up like $1 billion to create another team or something. I think that'd be really, really cool. Don't feed everything. Don't give everything to us from season 1 or season 2. That's another problem I had with F1 2020, was the progression to get from bottom to top was way too quick. Season 2, once you get like the Spec 2 upgrades on, Spec 3 upgrades especially, with like resource point generation, oh my god, was the progression crazy. I actually had to nerf myself a little bit. I had to stop upgrading facilities because my progression, my resource point generation was just too high, and I was out developing other teams way too quickly. So that's a problem. Overall, things need to be more difficult, and I think we need to either give the AI faster rate of development, or we need to nerf the amount of resource points we get. Either or, to fix up the balance, because it's a bit broken. Season 1, the balance is fine, but once you introduce Spec 2 in Season 2, it becomes a bit of a nightmare. One drink of water later, and I'm ready and raring to go for the next section, which I kind of touched upon in previous points, but I just want to bring it home even further again. Tougher financial consequences. The things that you do, like I said, I think F1 is a bit of a money pit, not a or wealth generation scheme, which it seems to be in 2020. So there just needs to be tougher financial implications for things you do. For one example, damage. Whenever you crash your car, especially when you total the car, that should be like a monumental amount of moolah coming out of your wallet, not 50k, which seems to be the maximum cap limit for any session that you crash out of. Here's a big one. Picking your teammate's strategy, being able to control them somewhat in the race would be a whole new level of awesome. Too many times in my career mode, I've been like the best car, for example. We've had really good tire wear. We can easily do a one stop, but my teammate, George Russell, I'm looking at you, would do a two stop, or he would use the harder compounds of tire when it made absolutely no sense, and it would end up costing the team big points. It made absolutely no sense because we had the best car, yet there were slower cars or cars with less upgrades, and they were on better strategies than what my teammate was. It was a joke. So if I can switch over, like from my tab on my strategy, say, all right, I'm doing a one stop, I'm going from mediums to soft, then I tab over to George Russell's car, my teammate's car, and say, right, I want you to do the same, or I want you to do the opposite. So start on the soft, finish on the medium, so we're not clashing in terms of strategy, and the control them in the race aspect, which would be pretty cool. And Codemasters have done this in the past on one of the grid games. You can tell your teammate to push harder for more positions. You can tell them to defend, get their elbows out, or you can just tell them to drive normally, I think. That would be a cool mechanic. So, you know, you can play that out in circumstances that are of high contention in the championship. So like the last race, Abu Dhabi, your teammate needs to finish in P5 to help win the constructors, and he's starting down in P10. You can tell him to go aggressive, risk it for the chocolate biscuit to get through the pack, and you can help win the constructors that way. Too many times as well where my teammate has not had a good starting position and they don't go anywhere in the race. Being able to break them out of that stranglehold would be sick. Oh, another thing could be tell them to save tires, to go really long, etc. Like they do in Motorsport Manager on the mobile game. I remember playing a few years ago. You could tell them to save tires or to push really hard. It's not hard, but it would require just a little bit of work, and then you've got that ingrained within the game system for many years to come, and it'll make a big difference for a lot of us career mode purists. Next, we have a rush R&D mechanic. So we currently have that at the moment, where you can rush in an upgrade for a date which is a few days earlier than the standard development, and there's a higher risk of that failing. I think maybe we could go one step further. If you want to rush even further, you can only bring the upgrade to one car at a certain time, and then you have to choose which car that goes to, whether it be yourself, whether that goes to your teammate, and then there can be a press or a reputation kind of consequence for that. Then you can be asked in the media, hey, why did you give the upgrade to yourself? Why are you being selfish? Or you gave it to your teammates, here's some positive rep for you or something. I don't know, be cool. Because why not? Pre-season testing, why isn't it in the game? Pretty simple thing that needs to be added to career mode at some point in the future. I think it will be added to the F1 games. It's just a matter of when. But yeah, we need to have a pre-season system where we can test out our new car, and there should be big financial... No, not financial. There should be big resource point gains to be made there by doing a lot of laps in pre-season testing. So maybe as a reward, the more laps you do, the more reliable your car is, or the better resource points you get, obviously. But then that's a really good opportunity to really go head first with those reliability failures, because we see countless times teams just coming undone in pre-season testing because they can't do the mileage that they want to do. And, that's really going to test the durability department. So I think that'd be really, really sick. And I love the whole pre-season ambiguous time of year where no one really knows where everybody sits on the performance index, and maybe during the preseason test, we can maybe grey out some cars or have like a question mark next to where they used to be on the performance index, have it blurred, and just then do a bit of sandbagging, then there's a bit of guessing, and then when we get to Melbourne, then as normal as it's been, we can see the true performance index and where everyone stands. But I love the idea of preseason testing, of practicing. I really enjoy this I used to enjoy this a lot in the league racing side of things when we switched to a new game, because the new game would feel different. Everyone would have like no setup, and there'd be a lot of ambiguity as to like which league races would be quick and which would be slow. Some people would sandbag and stuff. I remember this from like nearly 10 years ago. We were doing this, and I think in career mode, the same principles apply, and it's just mind games, and I think it's sick. So why not, Cody's? Chuck it in. Next, winning the championship needs to be a bigger deal. Yeah, we get 1 or 2 cutscenes, but I think there needs to be maybe a FIA end of season prize giving gala. I know they do that in real life. So just to have a setting outside of the Grand Prix weekend, we're all suited up and we've got champagne and everything's popping off, and then we have the actual trophy presentation. We get to pick it up. We get, I don't think we have that. We can't see the actual trophy in the game that we actually strive to achieve to win. That in itself doesn't really make much sense, does it? So chuck that in. And while we're on the subject of trophies, a trophy room needs to be an area we can explore in the game, because on F1 2006, you could actually walk through your trophy room. You could go to every single track and see where you've won trophies for and where you haven't, and then you get unlocks for completing all the trophies or getting a set amount of trophies. I just think it's sick. And then having like time trial stuff maybe tied into that, like leaderboards and stuff. There needs to be much better leaderboards for online stats and career mode stats, and in general, which is what I'll touch on in future videos. But in that trophy room is where all the stats and like this whole career on the F1 game needs to be displayed and showed off, essentially. Pick the location of your team and customize the look of your HQ. So if you're a team if you want to be based in England, maybe there's benefits to being based in England. You have better choice of staff members, which is another point I'll add in a second. But if you're based in America, you really want to be a true American F1 team, then there's going to be some consequences potentially that come from that. Maybe you'll have better staff members from America, but you'll have like more higher costs for traveling to different Grand Prix over the course of the season. So like when it gets to the European season, it might be a little bit more difficult for you. But yeah, that flows nicely into my next point, which was being able to hire and fire staff members like you can in Motorsport Manager. You can hire chief engineers, you can hire an agent, scouting agents. I know you can do that in FIFA. So having an agent scout out people for your youth academy, for your driver academy would be really cool. And then paying more for those higher key staff members is obviously going to have better benefits for research and development, for durability, for a whole manner of different things, for finding better F1 better racing drivers. Having a good scout will be really important. And then choosing the locations of where you go scouting for these people. Of course, in the world of F1, the UK and Europe is a really good place. Well, probably the best place to go scouting for the talents of all different kinds. But you can find, or hopefully you'll be able to find, little gems in Australia or South America or anywhere. Africa would be absolutely sick. So, yeah, I think that needs to be a thing. Next, we should be able to... Oh, another thing about the staff is having better pit crew. Training them up or buying better pit crew will give you better pit stop times and will reduce the frequency of pit stop failures, so blunders, so like a tire not going on or random stuff like that, slow stops, jammed wheel nuts, whatever it might be. Having better trained crew members will be a big benefit to your strategy and your overall race weekend, essentially. Can reduce repair times or replacing engine components between sessions. I think there's a lot of scope there to be explored in the future of the F1 game series. But next comes down to customization. I think we should be able to choose the shapes of vehicle parts. So things like wings, we can choose a package like big ass, high downforce, just like the look of it. Or maybe it'll have performance impacts as well. But I think just having to choose different shapes that you would like to pick from would be really cool, so I can differentiate my car from another YouTuber's car, or maybe your car, or whatever. And same too with when we get to like Monza, we can run like thinner spec rear wings or thinner downforce. I think will really add to the realism or the immersion we get in an F1 season, which I think would be really cool. Even extend that to things like the steering wheel, so we can change the look of our steering wheel. I think that's a big plus, because everyone has the same parts right across the board, and I think that's a little bit boring, so hopefully we can flesh that out a little bit. Next up, and this could come down to the random generated characters, the random generated staff members or drivers in the world that you might see regenerated after a few seasons or whatever. But I think having F1 Esports drivers as some of those generic names, so Brennan Lee or Jarno Opmeer or Danny Moreno, any of those guys, James Baldwin, maybe there can be a James Baldwin mechanic, there can be a Danny Moreno Spanish junior driver that you can sign to your team. I think that would be so sick to integrate the F1 Esports drivers. They are official key components within the F1 gaming, the virtual world franchise. I think that would be really cool to have them in the game. I think a lot of people would really like that. But another thing, get rid of Jeff. Maybe have extra engineers. I think having more choice of driver engineer would be really sick. I've said this a couple of times, but I would happily volunteer my voice talent to be in the game. I'll happily be a Jeff and tell people not to go too hard into Monaco's turn 1. Matty G, get him in. I don't know, anyone. I think that'd be really sick. If we can have just a little bit of variance, because, Jeff is alright, but we kind of get sick of his voice after all these years. I didn't have that written down, but that's something I've just thought of, which would be really sick. Moving on, being able to create your own engine. So we have the 4 choices of Honda, Renault, Mercedes, and Ferrari. Being able to make our own bespoke engine would be really cool. But I think maybe the contra to that is we have to pay a whole lot more to make that and fund the development of that engine. It'll have to be like a really crap engine, but there should be long-term benefits to making our engine in-house. I think that would be really, really sick if we want to separate ourselves from the rest of the field, essentially, and make our own engine. Maybe it's not a thing that you could do in season 1, because I don't think establishing an F1 team would have the facilities to make their own engine from scratch, not unless you have big manufacturer support. Unless you are a big manufacturer, I'm trying to say. So I think, again, a long-term goal of sticking out in career mode should be that you can create your own engine, as well as the other things I mentioned as well, like having an academy of youth drivers and making a junior team. These are all long-term goals to keep people playing career mode beyond the first couple of seasons. A greater level of customization as well would be lovely. Helmets, car livery, basically introducing like a thing where you can create shapes like Forza, and then basically from there you can do anything, because I know at the moment you can't have real life sponsors, because then there's lots of different licensing issues and I don't know, just consequences that come from that. So let us have a bit more customization on that front, and I think a lot more people would be happy with some of their choices, because I know people see my Monster Energy F1 car and they want to see it, they want to be able to do that themselves, and if you give the people the opportunity to make shapes, they can make whatever wacky team sponsors that they like, essentially. So hopefully that can be a thing in the future, but for now, we're going to have to wait. Second last point, and that is having drivers or staff members have injuries. We've seen a lot this year or last year, drivers having to step down because of COVID. We can have a similar, but not so realistic system where drivers can get injured in crashes or playing silly buggers in their off season, going on holiday or whatever, and they have injuries or come down ill or whatever, and potentially they could get replaced for a race. So maybe one race, I don't have Jeff in my ear, and I've got some other random engineer. because that happens sometimes. Sometimes real life gets in the way, and the same thing can be said of drivers. So having that, oh goodness, my camera's dead. But anyway, having your reserve drivers step up occasionally is something that happens in F1. It doesn't happen in the games, so having that actually happen in career mode would be really sick, and that adds to having the depth of investing in your youth academy or your reserve drivers. All right, I'm back now. My camera did die, and I don't know if my webcam was there for a while. But anyway, we're going to press on, and this is the last point that I'm going to make, because I realize this video is getting on a bit. But the final point is being able to race for another team, even if that restricts your options once you join said team. So one thing I like to do currently in my team is actually go and join McLaren, for example, and race alongside Lando Norris, or join Renault and drive alongside Daniel Ricciardo, for example. But I think one of the major reasons why Codemasters said we couldn't do that for this year's game is because F1 teams wouldn't want us to have control over the look of their cars and have that level of control, and like it would be just not allowed, basically. So I guess the workaround for that is if we want to leave my team and go race for another team, then it has to become a driver career mode. Now, I would be okay with that. So still keep my team on the grid, and I want to actually race for McLaren or race for Williams, bring them up, whatever, and then I want to try and beat the empire, essentially, that I created as a final last hurrah to a career mode that I want to do. That's the storyline that I want to make in F1 2021 or F1 2022. Once I've conquered everything with a team that I've created, I then want to go and join the enemy and then try and take down my former team. I think that is a whole new level of satisfaction. You do have that to a degree when you're signed to, whatever team you signed to in the past in F1 2019. But this time it's different because it's a team that you've actually started from scratch. They've got new management in a way, and then you have to take them down with potentially less benefits by racing for another team. You can't control the customization. You can't control the departments and stuff. You just have the resource points to upgrade your current facilities. So what you get is what you have to keep. That's what you have to work with. And so trying to take down your former team under those kind of conditions would be absolutely sick. So I hope that that's a thing that can be taken into consideration for the future. And same too with everything that I've said. Obviously, like 99% of these things probably won't be in F1 2021, but they might be introduced into the future based on your feedback to this video. Because I know that a lot of the things that I say, that Arif says, that Tom says, Into the Barriers, like a lot of the things that come from the community, Codemasters do listen to that, and eventually it comes into fruition. So I'm putting these things out there now so that, there's a slim chance it'll work for F1 2021, but maybe it'll work in the future, and, we can have this video or you guys to thank for that, depending on, where it comes from. So that's the reason why I make these videos, and hopefully you guys enjoy. I do like brainstorming and talking about new features of the F1 game. It makes me very excited. So I implore all of you guys to send in your feedback, your thoughts about some of the ideas I've said. If there's something I missed, feel free to let me know. In terms of multiplayer, chuck them in the comments as well, because I am going to make a follow-up video to this where I talk all things multiplayer, bugs, glitches, things we want to see, things that have previously been in the F1 games, things that have never been in there, that are missing, that are really added to the user experience. That video is coming very soon, probably sometime this month. So I'll get working on that once all the comments and stuff comes through for this one. But if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you need to see plenty more racing game content. Try to be respectful in some of your comments. Don't just slag off the game and say the game is crap without giving it a reason. Just give us constructive feedback and constructive ideas, because ultimately Codemasters, and everyone involved in this F1 community just wants to see the best F1 racing game we can get, and hopefully eventually we'll have a really good maybe not perfect game, but somewhere close to that. That's the goal, with features that some of us wouldn't have even dreamed of having, like being able to create our own F1 team. Before last year, that wasn't a thing, and we stand here in 2021, and that is reality. So the sky is the limit when it comes to ideas, so hopefully in only a matter of time, they can all come to fruition. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until the next video, I'll see you next time.